boys and girls, and welcome back to another edition of Snack Time with a Dollop of Read Aloud. We're going to continue with Medusa Jones by Ross Collins, with permission to be shared with you by, or given by, Scholastic Book Publishing. All right, so when we left off, Medusa and her friends were camping, and I asked you a question about mood. And the mood, remember, is the feeling that the author that the reader gets from the author's words. And the author's words and descriptions and details that they use in their writing or illustrations that are used in the book, those are the tone. So the tone that the author used was definitely something that was a little spooky, a little scary. And you started to feel a little bit of a tightness in your chest because you knew something was going to happen. So when we got to the end of chapter 10, we realized that something did happen. And that clue was given to us when Shirin and then Medusa and then finally Mino started to hear screaming. So when we last left our friends, they were going out into the rain and into the dark, and they were trying to find out what had happened to their other group mates. I wouldn't say friends, but to their classmates. Okay. And again, some of you were spot on with your predictions, or not your predictions, but your comments, saying that you felt scared, that you felt worried, you felt nervous. Those were all really good. So that shows that Ross Collins did a good job with his tone. Now, here we go. Chapter 11. "Slow down, sir," Medusa shouted. Cerberus may only have been a puppy, but he was pulling his leash with the strength of an ox. An ox is like kind of like a cow, but really big. Medusa, Shirin, and Mino could hardly see a thing except for when lightning would suddenly illuminate the steep, craggy rock face, and Cerberus was hurriedly pulling up behind them, or pulling them up. So the craggy rocks, that's like the rocky side of a mountain. The wind bit hard in their faces, and Shirin found it even tougher to get purchase on the wet rocks in his darkness. So when they say the word purchase, that means hold, because he has hooves, remember? So it's harder for him to hold on to the rocky surface now that it's wet with his hooves. "This is nuts," Mino yelled. "We're going to fall, and then there'll be 2 sets of screams." "I don't think they're far now," Medusa shouted back. "The screams are getting louder. Cerberus is definitely on their trail." So here she is trying to hold on to Cerberus. And look at all the rain. See those lines coming down? The lines are supposed to be raindrops. And it really looks like it's windy and they're getting pelted. My gosh, that tone is still going on. I can still feel how nervous they must be. She wiped the rain out of her eyes and quickly got her grip back on the leashes in case they slipped out of her hand. If she lost Cerberus, she didn't like to imagine what they would do. They climbed in the darkness until at last Shirin spotted something in one of the lightning flashes. "There!" he yelled. "I think I see them." They looked in the direction Shirin was pointing, and at the next flash they saw all the champions, 3 figures huddled together on a ledge. There seemed to be no path connecting them to the mountain. How on earth did they get there? As the friends got closer, they could pick out their 3 terrified faces of the champions. Medusa had only ever seen that expression before on her garden ornaments, and it was far more disturbing in the flesh. The 3 friends shuffled along the path until it stopped. There was a gaping chasm between them and the champions. So the chasm is like a really deep, big gap in the mountains. They peered down into it, but couldn't see the bottom. The rocks slipped away into endless dark. At last, Perseus looked up from the whimpering huddle of kids and spotted them. Medusa had never seen a look of such relief on his irritatingly handsome face before. "Help me!" Perseus shouted. Cassandra and Theseus looked up and saw Medusa and her friends. "Help us!" shouted Cassandra and frowned at Perseus. "We're too young and too pretty to die," Perseus sobbed. "What happened?" Medusa shouted back. "There was a rock fall," screamed Cassandra. "Rocks, they came down," shouted Theseus. "And the path, it went away." "Always a man of words," muttered Mino. Never mind what happened, Perseus wailed. Just help us, for the love of Zeus. The wind howled around the three terrified champions. Half of their camp had fallen down the gorge, and the other half flapped violently against them in shreds. The friends huddled together to talk over the wind. What can we do? Asked Chiron. Leave 'em, Minos said. As tempting as that sounds, Minos, said Medusa, we can't just leave them. We have to at least try. Rope, Chiron said. We don't have any rope, said Mino. I know we don't have any rope, but maybe the champions do. Good idea, said Medusa, and she turned to the champions. So here are the kids, and there are the champions. Do you have any rope? Medusa called. The rope fell down the hole, shouted Theseus. Oh well, said Mino, we tried. The rope fell down the hole. Let's go home. Don't leave us, wailed Perseus. Cassandra was just chanting now over and over. We're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. We're going to die. It was the most pitiful thing that Medusa had ever heard. There must be another way, she said to the others. Think, they thought. Medusa looked around, and there wasn't much to work with. Some shrubs, boulders, an old goat skull, and a small tree, which Cerberus was lifting his leg against. Medusa's eyes twinkled. She had an idea. Mino, see that tree over there? Mino looked over. What about it? Do you think you could push it over? For you, Med, Mino said with a smile. I'd take down a forest. A bridge, Chiron grinned, wiping the rain from his glasses. Why didn't I think of that? Because I'm the beauty and the brains of this outfit, Medusa smiled. She turned to the champions. Stand back, she shouted. Perseus looked at the chasm behind him. There is no back, he wailed. Then stand aside, shouted Medusa. We're sending over a bridge. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. We're going to die. We're all going to die, chanted Cassandra some more. Mino squared up to the shoulder. He felled some trees before, but this was pretty big, and he was a small minotaur. You can do it, Mino, Chiron said. Mino squatted down like a runner preparing to sprint. He counted to 3 under his breath. 1, 2, 3. And then he launched himself at the tree. His horns dug deep into the wood, and there was a loud creak as the tree began to uproot. That means the roots were coming out of the ground. Push, Mino, push, Medusa shouted. I am pushing, grunted Mino. Stones and dirt flew into the wind, and one by one, the roots were pulled up, and the tree began to fall. Cerberus ran about the base of the tree, barking furiously. What was the point of peeing on something when someone just comes along and knocks it over? With an eerie groan, the tree fell and crashed at the feet of the champions. Chiron and Medusa ran over and helped Mino pull his horns out of the wet wood. Well done. You saved them, Medusa said, and gave Mino a quick little peck on the cheek. I didn't do it for them, Mino said, blushing. There he is, pushing that tree. What a strong little bull. Or a minotaur, I should say. Medusa turned to the champions. There's your bridge, she called. Come on. The champions didn't budge. Their similarity to the postman was complete. Not only did the champions share their look of terror, but they were now literally scared stiff. Move yourselves, yelled Mino. But the champions didn't move. They're petrified. They're petrified, said Medusa. The champions looked at the tree as if it was a man-eating tiger. They weren't going anywhere. I'll go, Chiron said. Go where? Asked Mino. I'll carry them across. Your hooves can't handle the wet bark, Chiron, Medusa responded. I've come this far, haven't I? Chiron smiled. Anyways, what other option do we have? You're the bravest centaur on the mountain, Medusa announced. I'm the only centaur on the mountain, Med, said Chiron with a frown. Good luck, you big dummy, Mino said, and patted Sheeran's flank. That's like his side. Sheeran clambered up onto the roofs of the tree and started to inch his way across. His hooves slid around the bark as if he were straddling a giant icicle. Medusa could barely watch, as Sheeran slowly began to move forward, jamming his hooves into the bases of the branches where he could, trying not to look down into the dark, bottomless chasm. He was about halfway over when one of the branches, which was a foothold, gave way with a crack and disappeared down into the dark gloom. Sheeran swung his arms wide and managed to grab onto the tree. He looked down into the darkness and shuddered. Medusa and Mino shouted words of encouragement, and the champion stared in horror. Sheeran pulled himself back to his feet and bit by bit worked his way along until finally his hooves found the rocky ledge where the champions were shivering in despair. "Okay," said Sheeran once he got his breath back. "Who's first?" "Me!" Perseus shouted and pushed himself forward. "No, me!" Theseus yelled and grabbed Perseus's cloak to hold him back. "Ladies first!" wailed Cassandra and joined in to the scuffle. Here he is going across. What a brave centaur. And who's acting the opposite of brave right now? "I'm not being left behind," shouted Perseus. "I'm the son of Zeus." "Oh, Zeus schmoosh," Cassandra spat. "Anyone on a horse before me gets a big fat lip," Theseus growled and crunched his knuckles. Perseus turned to Sheeran. "We'll all go." "All of you? At once?" asked Sheeran. "I'm not sure I can." "Oh, please, don't leave me here to die," wailed Cassandra, trying to bat her massive eyelashes at him attractively. Sheeran looked up at the tree. It seemed crazy, but the thought of one treacherous crossing compared to another 5 was very tempting. "All right," he said. "Get up," but gently. The champions pulled themselves up one by one and grabbed on tightly to anything they could. Sheeran had never been ridden before, and this was not a good first attempt. Medusa and Mino watched the pantomime from the other side of the gorge. "What on earth are they doing?" Mino asked. "Let's pray that Sheeran knows what he's up to," Medusa whispered. Sheeran started to move towards the tree. With the champions on board, his hoofs felt like lead, and it was a struggle to take even one single step. It required all of his strength to climb onto the tree and start gingerly towards the gorge. The added weight seemed to help his hooves dig into the bark more solidly, but the grip was still as slippery, and now the wind seemed to be howling even more fiercely. Perseus sat on Sheeran's back and was gripping tightly around his neck. Cassandra was chanting in the middle, wrapped around Perseus. At the back was Theseus with a firm hold onto Sheeran's tail and facing the wrong direction. When the bottomless chasm came into view below, Perseus's grip grew tighter around Sheeran's neck. It was all Sheeran could do to keep breathing. He slapped Perseus's arms until his grip slightly loosened, and Sheeran wiped his glasses and inched forward, wedging his hooves into the branches as he went. The rain lashed against them, and the wind howled and wailed as nobody heard the first cracking noise. But everyone heard the second crack. And then the bark began to splinter. Crack. And then the champions began to scream. Crack. There they are. Poor Sheeran. Look at him. He's struggling. And then the tree began to lurch. Crack. And Sheeran could feel the wood start to move beneath him. "It's gonna split," shouted Mino. "It can't take their weight." Crack! "Run, Sheeran, run!" Medusa shouted. "I can't," Sheeran yelled. Crack! "We're all gonna die," Cassandra wailed. "Not if I can help it," said Medusa. "What?" shouted Mino. He looked around her, and he looked into her eyes. What do you think's going to happen? love that. Look. Crack. It's a big crack. Medusa's pupils started to glow. They're her eyes. The centers glowed like oranges, like an orange in the sun, but the edges of it were ghostly green. Ooh. The light started to illuminate her cheeks, her nose, and her lips. Medusa felt a pain in her temples. It was a cold pain, a cold white pain, like nothing she had ever felt before. She heard noise, building, the sound of 1,000,000 volcanoes erupting in her head. The wailing of the storm had gone, and all she could hear was the sound of pain growing and growing, cold and white and sweet, until suddenly it stopped. Mina watched as the colors in Medusa's eyes disappeared and were replaced with the purest white he had ever seen. It lasted for 1 beautiful second and was gone. Medusa collapsed. Mina ran to her and held her. She breathed quietly in his arm. The storm had ended, and Sheeran looked down. He had never seen a tree made of stone before. There she is. Wow, that was an exciting and long chapter. So this is going to be it for Read Aloud today. We also have class share, don't forget, at 11 o'clock. So I hope you join in. But I really want you to think about, what did Medusa do? She did something that she was afraid to do, something that her mom told her not to do. But she did it for a good reason. So 1, think about what she did. And 2, think about the reason that she did it. And think about if she'll get in trouble for doing what her mom asked her not to do. All right? So we'll check in a little bit at our class share. Otherwise, I hope you have a great weekend. Miss you. Love you. Stay safe. Bye, guys.